the experience of yogis and meditators from countries right around the world, each one of them sharing with us their navigational tools for coping with these times of challenge and change. Well, since the outbreak of the coronavirus, there's one thing that we have all really had to grapple with, and that has been the daily deluge of information. First, we had to understand what the virus was, and then we had to understand how it spread and how to keep ourselves safe. And at one point, it really did feel like we were being bombarded with things that we had to do, from news feeds, from Facebook, from social media, from WhatsApp messages being sent to us from well-meaning friends, all telling us to wash our hands whilst we sang happy birthday twice, that we had to sip hot water every 10 minutes in order to kill the virus, whether you had to wear gloves, whether you wore a mask, whether you washed your hair and your clothes, if you did venture outside. It really did get to the point where at one point I felt I can't actually absorb any more information about this. But then we do live in a world where everyone and everything is trying to give us information all the time. It's trying to inform us, it's trying to entertain us, to sell us something, to help us in any number of different ways and via any number of different outlets, whether it be TV, radio, via apps, tweets, texts, blogs, emails, reports, articles on Facebook, on Instagram, and all the other social media. News sources have turned from a water fountain into a fire hose. And it's led to something that is now referred to as infobesity, which was a new word to me, but I like it, infobesity. It leads to something called information anxiety. Researchers have found that our eyes are exposed to 105,000 words every day, and that's equivalent to 34 gigabytes of information per day, and that figure is growing. Now, I always like analogies that I can refer to and relate to, and this is an analogy I came across, a statistic from 1976 that the average supermarket stocked 9,000 products. And today that number is more like 40,000 products that our eyes have to absorb, information that we have to take in every time we walk down the supermarket aisle. And yet the average person actually gets the vast majority of their needs met from just 150 products. So this information overload has now really been recognised as a problem. And of course, it can lead to all sorts of things like irritability, restlessness, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, and of course, stress. And unless we're going to completely opt out altogether and go and live somewhere off-grid, we have to find a way of managing all this information whilst trying to keep sane. So our discussion for today is developing a resilience to information overload. Now, our speaker today, like all of those in this series, is a teacher and student of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University. Let me first of all tell you a little bit about the organisation. As the name suggests, it's a university for the spirit. It's a place where you learn about the self, learn about the soul. The organisation has teaching centres in over 110 countries right around the world, and an active presence in even more countries than that. It was established in India in 1936 when a series of visions and teachings came through the original founder, Brahma Baba. And these were teachings that were very much geared specifically to this period of time, this transitional period that we seem to be living through now, where we're going from one way of doing things to potentially a very different and new way of doing things. Now, the founder decided quite early on that he was going to put women in the front, making the Brahma Kumaris the largest spiritual organisation of its kind to be led by women. Well, let me tell you a little bit about our speaker today. And he is someone who really has consumed his fair share of information over many years. Reste has been a student and teacher with the Brahma Kumaris for over 35 years. He's from the Brahma Kumaris Centre in Montreal, from where he coordinates the activities of all the centres in Canada. He began his career in journalism with the CBC in the mid-1980s, working his way up from being a local radio news reporter to then a TV news reporter with the CBC Local News, and then a producer and then executive producer on national CBC Radio Canada, which is the French-speaking output. And he was in charge of the main evening news for many years for this channel. Along the way, he's also made numerous award-winning documentaries and earned himself a reputation for his work in the field of investigative journalism, exposing issues which have even led to a change in the law. Welcome to you, Eric. Thanks so much for being with us. And I feel like I've almost overloaded you already with information before we've even started. I didn't mean to do that, but there you go. It is an overwhelming subject. Now,
I enjoyed your presentation so much. I felt I was just watching a beautiful show, and then I realized, oh, well, I'm part of it.
You are part of it, I know. For a moment there, I forgot that I wasn't doing just that.
Not
but
at
let's
all.
talk about you, because that's why you're here. And you have had a very interesting life. On the one hand, you've been immersed in the stillness and silence and this beautiful, quiet life of the meditation centre in Montreal. And on the other hand, you've been spending all day in the absolute thick of things, in the hub of national television news, often working really late, often getting up really early. And I just wonder how you've done that. How have you managed to span these two very different worlds?
Well, you seem to summarize so well, and I just realized by listening to you how much, yes, my life is quite, somewhere between extremes, where I love to wake up early in the morning, be still, quiet, fill myself with spiritual information and feel like I'm flourishing, from all these inner work. And then, yes, indeed, go to another dimension, which is probably the extreme opposite, where we are bombarded with I think I counted one day that when I work at the newsroom, there was something like about 150 TV screens, open during the day that I will be exposed to. And in the early days when we used to look at the pile of newspapers that will be happening everywhere, we'll be living in the world of newspapers, physical newspapers. Now they're all translated into pixels and into screens and web pages. The beauty of what I've experienced is this magic where I awaken, if you want, on a spiritual journey at the same time as I embarked on the career in the media. And I didn't intend to do either one. I was certainly not predisposed for any spiritual journey at all. Ask my dad and my sisters, and they would probably agree with me that I didn't look like at any time I would go along that journey. And I studied in being a veterinarian, so I wanted to help the animals. Forget about news and about cameras and about mics. I mean, I never even ever dreamed of this kind of thing. And to be honest, I was always in reaction to news media when I was younger in my, teenager years. So how these two happen about the same time, around 1983, 84, and it's quite interesting, but both have always helped me, I think, to remain healthy in both worlds. And I think spirituality can, overload your head with fantasy and spiritual dreams, and you can be disconnected a little bit from the reality and going a little bit too high in philosophy and spiritual concepts. And also the media can also drown you in information that can actually depress you or irritate you to a point where you lose yourself. So I was always happy, I think, to intertwine those two journeys together. And to be very honest with you, they've always been a mirror to each other. Every time I go through some major moment in my spiritual journey, something happened very shortly afterwards in my professional path. And vice versa, when something happened at work, usually something happened afterwards in my spiritual journey. So I've been kind of blessed to be healthy in that way, that I like to go into silence, but I also like to go out in the noise to practice the relevance of what I'm learning in my spiritual journey. So one helps the other, one nurtures the other, and both are the mirror of each other by being the proof that they're both real and shaping my life in a way that I'm still feeling very comfortable with at the moment.
And has it been quite a hard journey to really feel that you're the same person in both places, that you don't take on a certain personality when you go to work and a different personality when you come back home and you're in the centre, but actually be Eric wherever you are? Has that been a journey for you?
You're good. Your questions are really good. I think I should interview you as well.
You're
I like the
welcome.
way
Anytime.
you approach, and you're
Anytime.
very lucid because you know the world, and you should introduce yourself at some point. You did also some media work. I'm speaking to you here from Montreal Meditation Center. It's a beautiful place, and we had the fortune to receive Daddy Genki many years ago. Daddy Genki used to be our spiritual, administrative head in the Brahma Kumaris for many years, and she passed away a month ago actually, from the time I'm speaking to you now, at the age of 104. She was a spiritual giant. She was my, big inspiration in many ways on my spiritual journey. And I had so many amazing moments with her, but one of them was happening right here, maybe a few feet away from where I'm sitting at the moment. And when she was here, after just being on that same chair as I'm sitting now, she gave a talk, she gave powerful, visionary ideas to a group of people, inspired a lot of people, and then walked off the stage right here, went in the hallway, which is right in front of me. And I was just standing there, waiting to see if she wants to say a few words or if she just passed by. She just went right by me, barely looked at me, and she was with the person who helps her all the time and translates for her. And then suddenly she walked by, then went backwards and went back to me, and with a little finger, she was so funny how she told me that. And she just told me right there, Eric, your conscience at work should be the same as it is when you're right here at the center. And honestly, she would have used a baseball bat and hit me right in the face, would have been probably about the same effect, I think, in terms of impact. I was just hearing that and I thought, okay, this is the line which is going to redefine this kind of braiding that I've always been doing with my spiritual life and my physical, professional journey. And I've always felt sometimes that, I was doing half, I'd say 50% good in both worlds. Sometimes I felt I should be more involved in my spiritual journey. Sometimes I would feel, I'm not doing enough in my professional journey. But this line that she gave me brought it back to 100% in both worlds. And I realized that my spiritual intention and vision should also be the same when I'm going to work, which was already kind of there, but not 100%. And I changed my mind thinking that when I go to work, I'm not going to work really. Working was actually the extension of what I do in the meditation center. And don't take me wrong, my purpose at work was still the same as a journalist, but spiritually speaking, I should have the same principles: respect, love, caring, serving, helping, and maintaining my own values, even when things are going really, really, difficult out there. So it really helped me, that little sentence: your conscience should be the same, either you're at work or you are in a meditation center. And the best image, I know it's a very cliche image, but for me it's always been that, is the lotus flower. You can pretend to be the beautiful flower that you want to be, but if you're a lotus, you may end up in kind of a muddy or stagnant water and still remain above the water. So I've always kept that image in my mind as, yes, you can work in difficult times, difficult areas, but don't forget that you have to bloom in your mind all the time.
To be honest, that's a path that I think many people would recognise in their own work. It's not just relevant to someone who works in the news agenda. We all of us who are on a spiritual path have to somehow integrate who we are when we're at work, and bring our spiritual practice into our workplace, which is another whole subject that we can come back to if we've got time later on. But hearing you talk about what you try and bring to your workplace in terms of all those beautiful values that you laid out for us, some people listening to that might be surprised to hear someone who is the executive producer of the main television news really trying to put forward those values and believing that those are the values that are being put forward, because so many people are losing faith, or they're not in step with how news is being rolled out in today's world in many countries around the world. And I wonder, over the 35 years that you've been working in news gathering, how much you feel there has been a change in values and been a change in really the ethics of how news is delivered.
That's a big question, and I would never pretend to be an expert in media analysis and the bigger picture, I think, of the media, particularly around the world, because the values and the ethic of journalism can change dramatically from a country to another. And even within a country, from a newsroom to another, I don't think that all the newsrooms use the same approach and the same values. I'm very fortunate. I work in a democratic country with a very wonderful, I think, public media, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We have the privilege to be independent. It's not a government media. It's funded partially by the government, but it's completely independent in terms of its editorial choices. We also work with very high standards in journalism ethics and standards for journalism. I know it's not the case everywhere. I know it's been challenged by a lot of people. It's not perfect by all means. The threats against the media has been increasing all the time. We know that now we have conspiracy theories that are really heating up in the brain of a lot of people. We have what they call fake news, which also tend to confuse a lot of people. And we have people engaged in the media with really wrong intentions. And I like to compare the consumption of media information with a diet, a physical diet that we use in our day-to-day life. And I think people should pay attention to what they eat physically. And ultimately, people, I believe, are responsible for what they will be eating. Under, of course, certain circumstances. I'm aware that some countries, they don't have the luxury of choosing what they will eat. But in general, I would think that if we can choose what kind of diet we consume, in the same way, I think when we come to listen to TV or listen to radio or read newspapers, we can also discriminate. The media has been invaded by different factors that are altering their purpose. Financial. I mean, the media is going through a massive crisis around the world at the moment. Some are closing down. Newspapers have gone bankrupt. They're transferring into the online media now, which is quite different. Social media has completely changed the reality. International connectedness, you can know instantly what's happening at the other side of the world. I mean, the reality today has nothing to do with the reality I think the media dealt with 50 years ago. Even when I started over 30 years ago, we had old computers with DOS system. I don't know if you even remember what it looks like, but it was, forget Windows 10 and these kind of things. It was another world. We used to receive, news on a wire that was like, coming from a mysterious satellite somewhere, and then here were the truth coming out of the wire. Everything has changed so much, but I still believe that a lot of people in the media industry have the same purpose, which is to serve the public, to serve people by bringing information that will allow a country to live in a healthy democracy. And I still believe that, particularly from public television, certainly, or public radio. Now, of course, we're competing with some media that are almost voluntarily distorting the reality and the information. So who's going to discern what to consume and what not to consume, and who is going to understand that what I'm consuming is right or wrong? Well, I think that we, at that time, need to really do a little research on what are the choices that I have. And today, more than ever, any individual who has access to internet has, like you mentioned in your introduction, like it's going on a supermarket with not only a few hundred products, but you have thousands of products to choose from. And it's quite discouraging because how do you know? Where do you go? I've tried myself to rearrange the, how to call it, the news file that I'm using every morning to ingest information. I used to listen to radio only at some point, reading a few newspapers. Now I have to select. You know, you go with Google, you go with other tools, and then you select your preference and what you want to pay attention to, which kind of sport you want to follow. How much do you want international news? How much do you want local news? And then you have to find out that, you know, the source of information is reliable. It's a very complex industry. It's a very complex world, but that looks to me very much more like a supermarket with food that I'm going to buy and digest and eat and digest. And I'm responsible a little bit for what I'm doing with that.
I think that's really helpful to kind of, in a way, see it as the equivalent of a supermarket, and that you have absolute choice over which products you're going to consume and which brands, in a way, you're going to trust and put in your trolley and ingest later on. But you talked about people consuming media as being a little bit like a diet and choosing whether you're eating healthy or not healthy foods. And this word that I came across, infobesity, in a way suggests that we are developing an addiction to absorbing and consuming news and content generally. And I wonder why you think that is, that we've suddenly become people that have to, you know, check our messages, our notifications, listen to maybe, you know, especially during the coronavirus, listening to news bulletins throughout the day. This fear that there might be a fashion or a trend that I don't know about, or I might somehow get behind on what's happening. Why are we so compulsively consuming content now in a way that we never did before?
Well, I think there are two things. One is when there is a crisis like we're going through at the moment, it's very well known that the mainstream media see their rating going through the roof. I mean, at CBC, as soon as this pandemic happened, the ratings for the news show and all the, you know, news hour shows exploded, literally. It went really, really into very, very high rating like never before. And it's, I think, healthy. People need to know what's happening. This is public information, and they have the right, and a democracy should offer truth, accurate information, useful information that will help the public to make the right choices in their life. So I think this is happening when there's a big event like the one we're going through at the moment. The other side of it is some people who become news addict, and sometimes it's because if you have a lack of inner world being, you know, rich and vibrant and nurturing, if you're empty inside, you will look for something outside to feed you, to nurture you, to entertain you, to excite you, to make you feel like you belong to a community. And so it's very easy for people to become, I think, addicted to news and to information. It may give them a sense of existing, belonging to a community. It makes you exist through some other realities. You live the life of other people because your life may not be fulfilling to you. So I think there may be many psychological reasons why people will use that as a drug, you know, as an addictive element. But for me, I find that, you know, if I see what's my purpose in all this, I want to be informed, I want to help other people, I want to make sure that the choices I'm going to make in my life are going to follow, you know, something in society which makes sense and which is healthy. So yes, I think there could be a massive problem with news addiction, but at the same time, I think we should never underestimate the purpose and the usefulness of a lot of this information. And I'm not here to really defend all the work of the media. I know there's a lot of negative things that is spread by the media, no doubt. I know it and I've seen it, and I'm feeling so sorry sometimes when I see some of my colleagues, being twisted in their approach in reporting. But I also know that a lot of media, mainstream media also, and also a lot on social media, have really, really good intentions. They really want to bring some powerful ideas in the forefront for people to be aware of what's going on. And I think that if we are deliberately selecting our diet, I think we can come up with very powerful information. So I really encourage people to balance their inner need with what they see out there and try to bring kind of a harmony between the two.
And of course, it's not just content that we're consuming that has been generated by news professionals such as yourself, because in a way, each one of us has now become a news editor, because we are putting out our own information. We're putting out our own spin on things. We are doing blogs, we're doing YouTube shows, we're sending WhatsApps, we've got a Facebook page where we can broadcast our ideas to, thousands of people. And, that's all adding to the mix. And in a way, that's great because it means we're all connected. But I have heard it said that people feel in a way that the more connected they are, sometimes the more empty they actually feel, the more lonely they feel. And somehow it's not having the effect that people are wanting to feel connected. How has that come about?
When I started as a very young reporter, I was in my 20s, and I was absolutely the least qualified person I think to be in the newsroom. I was really there by accident. I always joke and I say I came through the back door, by mistake. And why they kept me in the newsroom, I don't know. Maybe I was just wearing nice shirts at the time, and they liked those shirts, and they kept me there. I always managed, I think, never to say wrong things on the air. I hope I didn't. But in the beginning, I wasn't really passionate about the media, to be honest with you. I was very passionate about my spiritual journey. And I was just doing a job, and I was earning money that was allowing me basically to run a meditation center where everything is free, and basically the one teaching is the one paying. But I came across different stories in the early days in my profession. And one of them was actually having to do an interview with the Prime Minister of the time. He was in the election campaign. And I came back after that interview thinking, wow, you just met the Prime Minister of your country, had an incredible discussion with him that was very thorough and very true. I was very honest with him, and I just opened up with very sincere question, and he really was touched by my non-professionalism, I think. I was so naive in a way that he really engaged in the conversation. And the next day I was in person's kitchen where this person, absolutely unknown to the whole world, was telling me her whole life story. And at the end she was crying in my arms, and I was crying. And I was thinking, what is this job? You meet everyone in a society. You're touched in your heart. You use your head, and then you go back in front of a camera or in front of a mic, and you tell the story. Like you said, we become news outlet ourselves, and I was telling the story. And I realized that my personal journey will impact, either I recognize it or not, the way I tell the story. And if you look, and I was very fortunate that from the beginning I've seen the difference between, short news, 1 minute and a half, news in the news every hour, longer pieces, which we call here current affairs or short documentaries, longer documentaries where for 1 hour you look at an issue, and you may be biased, you may not, depending on who you are. And then movies that are also part of information. A lot of people think that they know the world by watching movies, and sometimes they do learn a lot of things. But I've seen that range of storytelling. You add to this radio, newspaper, and now social media. It's such a variety of ways of telling stories. Now, who am I to tell the story? I'm a storyteller. And I find that, people who have a rich life themselves and a keen desire to pursue some goal, they want something, they want the truth, they want what is right, they want to know, they become incredible storytellers. And if I can listen to these people, and there are thousands of amazing journalists in the world who took amazing risks going into very dangerous countries and war zones, and they report realities with the eyes of their conscience. And I think that these journalists, we should find who they are, follow them. Now it's a beautiful tool. You can just follow somebody. You don't have to sit at 9 o'clock in the evening and eat whatever we're being given. You can follow the people that you trust. The culture of trust, yes, has been eroded, but still exists in the media. When I then became a little bit more experienced in journalism, and the last few years, I reacted the way you described it in your introduction. I had an overdose of information at some point. I didn't know what to watch anymore. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I was consuming this social media, newspapers, radio, TV, and I got, like, as a professional, I was like having headaches. Plus, I was coming to meditate, and when I will try to meditate, my head will go like this with all kind of images and bombardments and epidemia and this and that and murder, and it's hard to meditate after you watch pictures that we cannot even broadcast because they are so bad and so terrible. And then you sit in meditation and you see all this blood and this horror. Now, to compose with this for me was, what's my intention? What do I want? And my focus has always been the same. You know, you want to help other people. Spiritually speaking, I want to improve the quality of my life so I can have a healthy life, I can be happy, I can be healthy in my mind in the world that I'm living. But if I'm working for the media, I would hope that many of us in the media want to also serve the public so they can also remain healthy whilst living in a crazy world. And I know it sounds a little bit idealistic, but I've really felt many times I worked against a current. I was in a newsroom, and sometimes it was very hard to convince other people that maybe we should go with another angle, with something more positive, bring some hope in the stories. And I will be told, no, Eric, you have to tell the story. This is what people want. And it was very hard to negotiate. But, you know, at the same time, I find that human stories are the most powerful stories. And every time we can bring back the human in the story, I find that very often people will go for it. And they will write their comment afterwards saying, you know, you touch me so much by this particular story. And it was not facts that would just hit the person, but it would be the human story. So I think we'd need to pay attention in the media to never lose the human side. And I see it even today with this massive amount of information. I see beautiful things happening even today in the media. And I see messages of hope. I see messages of resilience. I see messages of care and share between the people. But I see also a lot of other things. So yeah, it's a difficult world to live in at the moment, both in the media and watching the media.
But I love this idea that you have to use your discrimination to really find the news sources that are telling a true story with a true heart, and really select those. And if you are putting out stories yourself through your own blogs or YouTube or whatever, to really take responsibility for, you know, what message am I putting out there, because it's all adding to the mix of what people are experiencing and feeling in the world. But I want to bring you to your experience in that other part of your life where you're a teacher and student of meditation, of Raja Yoga meditation, which you've been doing for 35 years. And likewise, you must have seen changes in people coming to learn to meditate over those years. And keeping with this theme of how much information we're all consuming, and I'm particularly thinking of, you know, the youngsters today who you know, they don't just consume from one screen. They're on their device whilst watching the television, whilst listening to a piece of music. You know, 3 or 4 different things coming at them at the same time is not unusual. What happens then when someone arrives at a meditation like the one you have in Montreal? How hard do you feel people nowadays are finding it to really just sit in silence and to sit with themselves, to have no input, and to really turn within and really see actually what information is coming from within themselves. How hard in today's society do you think people are finding that to do?
Well, I'm not sure if it's harder or not, or I think human spirit has always been in trouble connecting with the self. If we look at the media today and we think of television screen, what I like to introduce to people who want to meditate is that the primary screen of your life is actually your mind. And the primary voice you're going to hear is the one of your conscience. And we have a beautiful project that the Brahma Kumaris have been part of for 20 years. It's called Images and Voices of Hope. And the concept was very, very wonderful. And in the beginning was the world needs a new story. And we need to change the stories that we're telling people. We need to have stories of hope, of course, and stories of inspiration for revealing who we are at our best and what can the world be if it becomes better. The meditation is simply the ability to watch the screen of the mind and to listen to the voice of the conscience and see if I enjoyed that show or not. And if I listen to the voice of my conscience, watching the screen of my mind, and the only thing I see is something very blurry and noisy and terrible and that doesn't make sense at all, then I don't watch it and I don't tune in. I don't, how do you call it, when you zap on your remote, you don't choose that channel. I think most people can't even understand what's going on the primary screen of their life, which is their mind and the voice of their conscience. They don't figure out what's this show all about. If you turn on your TV and you watch something that you don't have a clue what it's all about, and the pictures are all blurry and going funny and disappearing and mixing up 3 movies at the same time with recipes and weather forecast, I don't know you're going to really enjoy watching that show. So people lost touch with the pleasure of watching their own inner show, the soul show. And the purpose of meditation is basically to show again to everyone how the most amazing media to watch is actually the one of the soul. The soul produces amazing images, and it can have an amazing voice. We just need to produce it properly. I'm a news producer, I'm a documentary producer, so I enjoy the concept of producing, which means putting pieces together. And you can even say, putting things that have gone into pieces into one piece, so you experience inner peace. So I don't know if it's easier or not for people today. I think probably 100 years ago, many minds would have been also distorted by other things. Today, yes, we might be distracted by the media, but I've never seen media as a big monster, like many people like to turn it into. I think there are many monsters in the room right now, so media is just one of them maybe. But every monster, can also turn into a charming prince, probably, or charming princess. And so how do you look at it? How do you use it? What do you do with it? So when people come into the meditation center, as I said, to me now, my vision is the same. Either it's at work or here. What I like to think is that we should fall in love with our own soul once again. We should want to listen to our inner voice and start to appreciate what is the inner voice telling me. And I should start to learn how to enjoy the channel of my mind, which can create the most amazing pictures that no television, no movies can present to me. I'm the best producer for my own soul. So this is the approach I would take to, blend those 2 dimensions together. Meditation is producing the movie of your life that you would want to watch on the big screen. And you're the producer, you're the main actor. You may get some help from a big director if you believe in it. You can try for it. But we are producing, like you said earlier, we are our own anchors and actors of the media that we're projecting. So if we want our life to be worth watching by other people, first we should want to watch it ourselves and feel good about it. And this is the big journey that I find I've been on for many years. It's not an easy journey, to be honest with you, to be exposed to love and happiness and peace, beautiful concepts, to adopt them in your life and to become the image and the voice of hope yourself. Well, I've tried hard. It's not always easy, but the good news, there is a good news in this, is it's possible. And when it becomes a reality, to be honest with you, it's incredible. I've discovered how my heart can increase in size like I would have never imagined before. I knew what it was to love few people, my family, a few friends. How about to love the world? I've never imagined what it would be like. So increasing the capacity of the heart, increasing the capacity of the mind, is suddenly like tuning in on a beautiful movie channel that you see something that inspires you and you think, I can be such a good person. Why not? I can experience happiness by injecting goodness out there. I'm not saying I can do that with all the news reporting that I'm doing. Sometimes I have to report on terrible things, and I've done many investigative stories that are not showing the bright side of society. But I always feel that if by showing the ugly side of society, I can trigger desire or motivation and inspiration to turn it around and to go for something where the values are higher, well, it also achieves a good purpose. So I don't know if it ever answers your question, but that's how I deal with incorporating also spiritual meditation into the world that we lived in, the world of the media I lived in at the moment.
It absolutely answers the question, and I love this image of the screen of your own soul, the screen of your own mind. And, never mind, is it a screen that you yourself would want to watch, but would you be happy for other people to watch that? And is it beautiful and inspiring and uplifting that you'd be happy for other people to tune in and watch your own mind? But also talking about meditation, and you've talked about the story of your own conscience, but there is also this experience of silence that we have in meditation. And for many people, there is a fear around silence. It feels empty, it feels threatening, perhaps. It feels maybe even boring. And yet, when you dive into that experience, silence is actually anything but uninteresting. It's the most interesting. How would you describe that feeling that you have of just the absence of information, yes, but the absence of sound as well, and just being in silence?
Well, the image I would use is actually that almost as if we first need to create a big bang to have silence afterwards. And I think to bring people into silence right away, it's rarely, working out. It's very efficient. I find the best approach is you whack them. You just create a big bang in your head, and then you allow them to experience silence. And what I mean by this is, same with information in the media. You have to give facts. You have to give ideas that will be so impactful that afterwards there's a process in the mind to digest that information. And I find that in spirituality, to tell people, don't think, stop the noise, shut down the TV, go into silence, rarely works well. Instead, the spiritual presentation that we create in the Raj Yoga meditation centers is throw some ideas that are so different from everything you've heard before that idea will create silence afterwards on its own. And I give you a very simple example. When I came to the Raj Yoga center, I was told at some point, that you don't have a soul. And I was like, what? I've always believed that I have a soul. And I said, no, you don't have a soul at all. Who are you? You think you're Eric, and you're French, and you're Canadian, and you're a journalist, and this, and you don't have a soul. So that was a little bit of a trigger for me. And then she said, no, you are a soul, but you just happen to have a body. And that body you have is just temporary. And I know it sounds like, yeah, okay, nothing new, but to me that was a big news, that I am a soul and I don't have a soul. And I'm not male or female. I'm a soul in a male body. And I know it may sound like semantic, but actually I was intrigued. I learned in science before, and I wanted to know, what do you mean about I'm a soul? I know myself as Eric, but I don't know myself as a soul. And when I was given this idea about the content of the soul, what the soul really is, about the mind and about the intellect and about the emotions, personality, everything, well, that created a big noise in my head. That was like, whoa, I never thought of that. And it really intrigued me and it interested in me. So then when they said, okay, now we're going to meditate, I find that naturally my mind was absorbed into some of those thoughts, but those thoughts were taking me into silence. Now, if I lost my wallet, and I'm thinking, where is my wallet? This is not going to take me into silence at all. So this is a noisy thought. And you can't tell someone who lost his wallet, okay, now we're going to meditate, sit down, imagine you have not lost your wallet, everything is fine. It's not going to work. I mean, if you ever lost your wallet, forget it. There's nothing you can do until you find your wallet, or until you have to conclude you will never find it again. But thoughts create sound. So I can only understand that, yes, let's find the proper thoughts that will generate silence. And that's the approach I like very much, that I have to create my own music. I have to create my own rhythm in my head that will bring peace. So silence never comes just like that. And I think it takes a long time to quiet the mind. And instead of telling people that we're going to go really into silence, I prefer to tell them we're going to go into a type of thoughts that you're going to really enjoy. And let's entertain ourselves with the beauty of the mind. And we will find that sometimes happiness is loud, sometimes silence is loud, and sometimes everything quiets down, and it seems like now I'm entering silence. People sometimes think that they should stop their mind. They should stop thinking. It's just, well, try to stop a wild horse from running when you're on it. It's not going to stop. But to tame the horse may allow you to make it stop at some point. So I think the process of meditation is a long process of taming. I hope it's the right word, to tame the mind, to learn how to, redirect the mind. And it's a beautiful adventure, to be honest with you. It's amazing what we can do in there. It's beautiful what we can watch on TV and listen on radio. But what about what I can do with my own mind? It's just that in the beginning it's rough. It's not obedient. It's mischievous. It's wild. It's crazy. But it's my mind. So how about I try to teach the mind a little bit more how to think positive first, and from positive thinking into value-based thinking, then we can approach inner silence. It's a process.
Well, we've talked a lot about a number of different things. I think it's time we actually had an experience of some of those things that we've been talking about. And if it's okay with you, Eric, it would be lovely if you could just lead us into a meditation, perhaps speaking out your thoughts as you meditate, and we'll follow your thoughts, and together we can just bring some stillness and quiet to this information that we've been absorbing this afternoon. That would be just perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, thank you for, again, giving me that opportunity, and invite everyone to just follow a few thoughts, which I'm going to improvise. It's just based on this particular discussion in the context of what we're talking now in terms of how I respond to the information that I'm receiving from outside. So if you want just to follow a few thoughts, I'll take you into a space which may be filled at some point with silence, but hopefully before even silence, sneaks in, maybe beauty will sneak in, and maybe some purpose will also fill the room. So just very naturally, if we sit and become quiet in the space of where we are, we pay attention to the thoughts that we create in our mind. And one of the beauty of the mind is to visualize, to create images. So I can imagine that I'm entering my inner living room, the living room of the mind. Just imagine how would the living room of the mind look like. If I were to imagine how comfortable I want it to be, but how is it really at the moment? And the first thing I would want to do in the living room of the mind is to open the curtains, open the windows, and allow a lot of light to come in. Beautiful, bright light. And I see the living room of my mind flooded with a beautiful light. And it becomes a spiritual living room. A room where living, being alive, awakens within me the purpose of my life and the beauty of my life. And I want this living room of my mind to shine, to radiate, to feel fresh, and to allow me to see the purpose, experiencing life fully, to be able to enjoy my life, to be happy with myself. But I know that many other things can also come through the window, other forms of images and noise. So I want to select what I'm going to look at and what I'm going to allow to come in. And many people will come into my life with their own ideas, with their own stories. But I want to nurture this beautiful living room of my mind with the light. And I will be willing to listen, to share, and even to be part of other stories. But I will know when to come back to the space where I see purpose and I see beauty. And I'm not alone in the living room of my mind. I know there is a higher energy coming to inspire me, to fill me with beauty. Life itself has its own magic, has its own power. And I want to feel connected. I'm not alone. I belong to a big, big story. And as an actor in the world story, I want to bring light to the world, to share that light of my living room with the world, inspiring, uplifting, and sharing with the world. Thank you, Philippa, for bringing me here.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was really beautiful. I feel very still and centered within. And of all the information that I have absorbed throughout the whole day, that was by far the most illuminating and uplifting and inspiring. So thank you so much for joining us and being on our masterclasses today.